A very good morning to all of you. Today's class is all about the beautiful poem The Gift of India by Sarojini Naidu. Sarojini Naidu was an Indian activist, poet, politician, a well-known freedom fighter and a famous orator. She is often known as the Nightingale of India and Bulbul-e-Hind because of her mellifluous voice. She was one of the most prominent figures in Indian nationalist movement. Her mastery over the difficult poetic structure made eminent English writers like Edmund Gosse and Arthur Symons to appreciate her work widely. She topped her matriculation examinations at the year of 12. She had a deep reverence and love for poetry, and she intends to learn fair languages. She took their advice and sought inspiration from India's natural beauty and essence of the country's social milieu. Her poems depicted social settings and the contemporary picture of India. She used to keep writing about the beggars, the snake charmers, the fishermen, about everyone and everything that was contemporary and India was commonly known about. Now, Gopal Krishna Gokhale once asked her to use poetry in order to inspire the freedom fighters. And then she tried her hands into writing, and she has published her first collection of poems in the year 1905 under the title The Golden Threshold. And then the notable works were The Bird of the Time, The Broken Wings, The Feast of Youth, and so on. This particular poem, The Gift of India, was written in the year 1915 in the context of World War I. It is one of the patriotic poems by Sarojini Naidu. It is included in her volume of poems called The Broken Wings, Songs of Love, Death and Destiny. Sarojini Naidu dedicated this book to the dream today and the hope of tomorrow. The volume reflects the spirit of India, though some of her poems describe the poet's personal losses and longings. Now we will have the poem in front of us and we will discuss the poem in detail. We can understand the poem has been written based on the theme of World War I. That was the main plot of the poem, and she has portrayed the sacrifices of the brave Indian soldiers, and she shows her utmost reverence in order to praising them. So all will be evident here in this poem. Let us now discuss the poem in detail. Before proceed, I will try to fetch the central theme. Just do listen to my words so that you can understand what the poem is all about. The poem The Gift of India is an emotional rendering of a bleeding heart. It is a narrative poem presenting a vivid, dramatic picture of the pitiful plight of the soldiers who laid their lives in the war. However, history has forgotten their sacrifices, but the poet is urging all the audience not to forget them, but to admire them and remember them with utmost love and affection and compassion. The poem, emotionally poignant, arouses a huge sense of pride and patriotism in the hearts of countrymen. The Indian Army was an important part of the British forces, particularly during the World War I. That you have to keep in your mind, because many questions may arise after reading the poem. You all can ask, ma'am, how can the Indian people are actually helping the British people or the British Army? So actually at that moment when World War I took place, this Indian Army was a great part of the British forces. And the war involved a large number of nations. Countries such as India, ruled by British, sent men to the war zones. As at that time, the country India was ruled by the British, so they actually sent the people of India to the war-prone zones. The number of dead and wounded are appalling. The vivid, realistic yet highly dramatic and intensely emotional account of the dead soldiers, the ruthless killing of our brave Indian warriors, which is an irrecoverable loss, makes Naidu's The Gift of India a memorable poetry. Now we will conclude the poem with a note of optimism that she shows, because she actually felt nothing can beat this disharmony and hatred. Only harmony and peace can prevail everywhere, and only then the real independence should be galloped by all of us. Before that, it will be a futile affair. And it is hoped that the sacrifices of the brave sons of India will have international recognition in the passage of time. Mother India gets a sense of satisfaction, hoping for a better future where, as I told, peace and harmony will prevail. Ironically, the Indian soldiers are forgotten despite their sacrifices that they had done willfully in the World War I. But actually, to quote Shashi Tharoor, the Indian writer and politician, wrote in his essay, "Why the Indian soldiers of World War I were forgotten. The role and sacrifices of Australians, New Zealanders, Canadians and South Africans were celebrated for some time in books and novels, and even rendered immortal on celluloid in award-winning films like Gallipoli. Of the 1.3 million Indian troops who served the conflict, however, you hear a very little." Okay, so by this you can understand the meaning of his quote and what he actually wants to portray through this quote. Now we will directly drop to the poem. I will ask all of you to open the book containing the poem, and in the previous worksheets also and study materials also you will get all this available if you don't have. So let us begin. Is there aught you need that my hands withhold? Is there aught means, is there anything you need? You means the British people. You need that my hands withhold, that my hands are holding back. So here we can see Mother India calls out to the British who have colonized India. She asks a question if she has withheld anything left but to give them. So she is asking, is there aught, is there anything, you means the British people, the British colonizer, do you need anything more? Do you find anything I have withheld, I have holding back? Rich gifts of raiment or grain or gold. Rich gifts of raiment means clothes, grain we all know, and gold is a metal. But here we can see it is a symbolism. Raiment actually shows the culture, and grain shows the production, and gold shows wealth. So you have already taken hold to our raiment, grain and gold. So is there anything you are asking for? Lo. It is actually an expression to arrest someone's attention. I have flung to the east and the west priceless treasures torn from my breast. Now east and west, priceless treasures torn from my breast. Priceless treasures means it is actually a figure of speech. It is metaphor. It means what? Actually, she is comparing the brave hearts, the Indian soldiers, to the priceless jewels or the priceless treasures. So the priceless treasures are torn from my breast. Now she exclaims that, like, she already sacrificed all her brave hearts who are torn, who are ripped from her, stricken womb, from her breast, and they are flung to east and west. They are scattered east and west, and they are nothing but the priceless treasures. And yielded the sons of my stricken womb, and yielded means and provided the sons of my stricken wombs, and means she has given up the sons of hers born out of her stricken womb to the drum beats of the duty, means to the call, to obey the call of duty. Here it refers to the call the Indian soldiers actually had to follow. It was their duty in order to assist the British colonizer. Call of duty. And sabers of the doom. Sabers means long heavy swords, and sabers of doom, again it is a metaphor which shows annihilation, means which actually this sabers means the swords are symbolic of the annihilation of their lives. Okay, so weapon of annihilation. Now in short we can say, it is written here, Mother India actually calls out the British who have colonized India, and she asks if she has withheld any of her riches, grains, garments and gold. She exclaims that more than this worldly riches, all of you have claimed for the most precious treasures of mine, and they are nothing but the very valuable lives of the Indian soldiers who are now flung in east and west. They have sacrificed their lives of our priceless Indian sons. She has given up the sons born out of her womb to serve British cause in the First World War. Now we can understand this stanza. Through this stanza we can understand the poetess is very much helpless. Rather, she is asking to the British colonizer, to the audience, to the readers, what can someone ask for? I mean, we have already given everything, not only the material, not only the worldly things, but also the most precious treasures, that of our womb stricken. Then also you are asking for what? She is actually exclaiming. Now the next stanza. Gathered like pearls in their alien graves. Now, like, gathered like pearls in their alien graves. Alien, why? Because they are actually scattered in different countries, like Persia, which is now Iran, Egypt, Flanders, that is Belgium, and France. So that is alien graves. Why? Because after their life has come to an end, they are given to rest in the, they are given the place to rest, and that too in the graves. And the graves are there in all around the world in a scattered way, and these are alien graves. Silent they sleep by the Persian waves. They are sleeping after death. They all are sleeping silently along the shores of Persia. Scattered like shells on Egyptian sands. Now the others are, they are like broken shells and scattered on the sand of Egypt. They lie with pale brows and brave broken hands. Why it is told pale brows? Pale means after death their bodies have become bloodless, and the the brows have lost their color and become pale. Okay, so that is why they lie with their bloodless bodies, brows and brave broken hands, and their limbs are also broken. Now we can understand how ruthlessly they all are slaughtered in the battlefield. They are strewn like blossoms mown down by chance. Like this is also like blossoms, this is simile. Their lives are compared to the blossoms. So they are strewn means they are scattered like blossoms mown down by chance. Mown down means destroyed in great numbers. Okay, by chance. Their lives are destroyed in troops on the blood-brown meadows of Flanders and France. Why this blood-brown meadows? Because after the war, their life has come to an end, and with their red blood, the meadow has become completely brown. That is why it is told the blood brown meadows, that is brown, that has become brown with the blood of the soldiers of Flanders and France. Now here we can get the ruthless imagery, how cruelly they all are killed in the battlefield, and how their graves remain unrecognized and alien, and they all are just lying silently, and they all are not recognized, and they all are not given proper reverence, proper respect. They all are just lying, and without its true cover, and they all were lying naked, and that should be the end of their life. Is that so? The poetess is asking, were they too cruel to claim such end of their lives? Should this be the end? Should this be like that only? So here we can also see the poet has moved the readers by creating a great emotional appeal in these lines, which are made further fascinating by virtue of their beauty of imagery. She uses simile to compare dead heroic soldiers to the pearls, to the shells of Egyptian sands. She also mentions them as the blossoms, right? And they all are lying in their alien graves. They are sleeping eternally by the shores of Persia, on the sand of Egypt. In another beautiful imagery, the poet compares the dead soldiers to the blossoms and have been mowed down by chance. The flowers remain scattered without proper care and attention. The soldiers lie motionless on the blood-stained battlefield like the carcasses of animals. Our priceless gifts to the British have gone unnoticed. Which we have received in their exchange is immeasurable grief and sorrow. Okay, so next comes the third stanza. Can ye measure the grief of the tears I weep? Can ye means can you measure the grief of the tears I weep? Now she is asking, can you ever, she is actually rhetorically put a question whether anyone can measure the grief she has gone through, or compass the woe of the watch I keep, or ever would you be able to comprehend the sorrow at the loss of my martyred sons, or the pride that thrills through my heart's despair? And can you be able to take the pride at the heroism of my sons, which overwhelms my heart with despair. Despair means sorrow. And the hope that comforts the anguish of prayer. And the hope that comforts the anguish of prayer means pain in the heart while praying. So, do you think that it is providing me all the comfort to deal with the pain in my heart while praying, which I can feel? And the far so glorious vision I see of the torn red banners of victory. And the far sad glorious vision. Now, what is the sad glorious vision? It refers to her vision of true freedom, which India would attain from the British, but it is sad that it will also result into the loss of a great number of people. That is why sad glorious vision I see of the torn red banners of victory. Torn red banners. She is using victory on one hand and torn red banners on the other hand. Actually, it's a blood. Torn red, red here shows the blood. And victory is gained at the cost of Indian soldiers' blood. So the victory flag is torn and blood stained. So we can understand she puts the question rhetorically and she is asking, can you be able to get the grief that I am going through and that is tearing me apart, and the pride at my son's heroism that overwhelms my despair. She bears immeasurable pain in giving away her dear sons to the colonizers' demand. But she hopes that this pain in her heart while she prays would be accepted, and one day hate and terror will come to an end, and that this actually will comfort her. The poet Sarojini Naidu is here hoping that a successful war of independence would be waged by the Indian against the British, as signified by the war banner, and waged by the British, for which she feels glorious. But at the same time, she feels sad for the soldiers who were going to die for the cause, as signified by the banners being torn and colored become red as blood. Now the last stanza. When the terror and tumult of head shall cease. When the terror means, when the terror, you can understand, when the extreme fear and the tumult means the loud, confused condition. Here it is a metaphor. It is compared to the spiteful war of hate shall cease, when it will be subsided, and life be refashioned on anvils of peace, and life will be again refashioned, remolded on the anvils of peace. Anvils is actually, it is the the strong blocks of iron which is used to give the metal a new shape. Now here we are talking about the anvils of peace. The peace will remold everything, okay, and with its touch things will become harmonious, peaceful, calm and decent. And your love shall offer memorial thanks to the comrades who fought on the dauntless ranks. Your love means all of our love. We all should be thankful to them, and we all should portray our memorial thanks to the comrades, means to the fellow soldiers who fought on the dauntless ranks, who actually fought in the dauntless, means courageous ranks. And your honor the deeds of the dauntless ones. Remember the blood of my martyred sons. And in the honor of their deeds, you all will show your utmost reverence to the martyred sons. Now here the speaker actually concludes on a note of assurance that the verses display an ardent desire for world peace and harmony, obliterating revenge and hatred. There would be universal love and brotherhood among all, replacing negative attributes that prevent the growth and development of every nation. The speaker keeps faith when she says, "The terror and tumult of hate shall cease, and life be refashioned on the anvils of peace." She expects that the multiple sacrifices of the admirably brave soldiers would be remembered by all with love and gratitude. The revered soldiers will be immortal forever. People's love will offer memorial thanks to the comrades who fought on the dauntless ranks. People will honor the memorable deeds of them. They will remember the blood of the martyred sons of India. Now, Naidu's poem actually oozes utmost pathos and sympathy for the hapless victims in the war. The Indian soldiers are among the first victims to face the horror and trenches, and their lives had come to a very cruel and violent end. Then also the Mother India, through the poet, she wants us to remember the sacrifices that had been made on their part, and to remember them with our utmost reverence. And they are the martyred sons of India. They are the cause of our pride. Whenever we will remember them, there should be tears in our eyes, right? So here the poetry ends. You will understand this poetry because explanations will get there, and everything I tried my best to discuss. Let me just tell you the themes once again. The main themes are destructive aspects of war. Actually, it shows the destructive aspects and the annihilation that may take after the war. Whenever the soldiers heard the drum beats of the duty, they just obeyed that and they laid forward. But what had happened afterwards? Their lives are scattered and found in the alien graves of France, Belgium, and Egypt, and everywhere, right? So that is the destructive aspect of war. The forgotten heroes, the second theme. Even if their sacrifice is, we cannot even deny. It is undeniable. Then also they are forgotten in from the today's history. And we can say, as Sasi Tharoor said, the other this Australian and the other foreign countries' sacrifices are still are still sung with much pride, but this Indian soldier's space in our history, in the articles of history, has become very little. So they are now forgotten heroes, but the poet wants us to remember them always with a proud heart. The third theme is the need to stop war. Yes, because war actually brings nothing but annihilation, destruction, and it causes the utmost demolition of the lives which are not at all required, or which are not at all wanted on our part. And she always wants to say that one day this disharmony, this discomfort, and this cruelty, hatred will be reformed with the anvil of peace, and peace and harmony will prevail everywhere, because we all need to stop war. That will only make sense. And last, spirit of patriotism. Spirit of patriotism seems to forward the whole poem, and it is very evident in every stanza, and it is written very nicely with beautiful emotions, and with the when the poet actually shares all this, she has just put her heart open in front of the audience. We can understand the emotion that is hidden inside her heart. So the spirit of patriotism is very much evident, we have seen. So this is actually written in an elegiac form. This is an elegy, and it consists 24 lines and divided into stanzas. Not actually divided into stanzas, but 24 lines. It uses the couplet form with the rhyming scheme AABB. So here I am going to end the class. So I think enough for today. If you have any doubt, we can discuss or continue in the next class. So do read the poem and try to fetch the emotion that the poet wants to portray. Okay, have a great day ahead and do attend all the classes carefully. Thank you.